Okay, you've got that big developmental psych final coming up, right? And you need to absolutely nail the section on adolescence? Well, you came to the right place. Think of this as your ultimate study guide. We're going to break down exactly what you need to know, no fluff. So here's our game plan. We're starting with the massive physical changes of puberty. Then we'll dive inside the head to see how the brain literally rewires itself. After that, we'll see how this leads to a whole new way of thinking, tackle that classic question of why teens take risks, and finally, see how it all plays out in their social world. Let's get into it.
All right, let's dive right in. First up, the physical revolution. This is the biological blueprint that kicks off that whole journey from being a kid to becoming an adult.
Okay, first things first, a core definition you absolutely need for the exam. What even is adolescence? Well, it's that crucial transition period between childhood and adulthood. And the official starting line, the thing that kicks it all off, puberty. That's the biological process that gives you an adult-sized body and the ability to reproduce. Now, this is a classic exam comparison, so pay attention. The timing of the growth spurt. You'll notice that for females, it typically kicks off about 2 years earlier than for males, around age 10. For males, it's closer to 12 and a half. That 2-year gap is a key detail to lock in for your test. So you see those average ages, and it kind of makes you wonder, right? Has it always been this way? Has puberty always started this early? Well, the short answer is nope, not even close. And this is all because of something called the secular trend. Just look at this chart. You can see how the average age for a girl's first period has been steadily dropping for the last 150 years. The big takeaway here, the thing to remember, is that our environment, things like better nutrition and healthcare, has a huge impact on the timing of our own biology. All right, so that's the body, but now let's go inside and look at the massive construction project that's happening in the adolescent brain. Okay, this image right here. It's huge. You got to understand this. It's like watching a time lapse of the brain growing up. See how it matures from the back to the front? The blue and purple areas are the more mature parts. And what's the very last part to get the upgrade? The front of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. That's your CEO, the part in charge of planning and impulse control. It's not fully online until your early 20s. So what's actually happening during this rewiring? 2 key terms for your exam. Write these down. First is synaptic pruning. The best way to think of it is use it or lose it. The brain is literally cleaning house, getting rid of inefficient pathways to get faster. And second, there's myelination. This is like upgrading your brain's internal wiring from old school dial-up to super fast fiber optics. Communication gets way, way faster. So when you get a faster, more efficient, rewired brain, you get a whole new level of thinking. And that, of course, brings us to the big man himself, Jean Piaget. Okay, exam alert. You absolutely have to know Piaget's final stage, the formal operational stage. This is a total game changer. It's where we gain the power of abstract thought. It means you can think about hypotheticals, about what-ifs, and use something called hypothetico-deductive reasoning. Let me give you a really clear example. In the real world, we all know a book is not larger than a house. But an adolescent in this stage can ignore reality for a second and just follow the pure logic. If the first premise is true and the second is true, then the conclusion logically has to be true, even if it's ridiculous. That's the huge leap in thinking we're talking about. And this all leads to your new secret weapon for acing this exam, metacognition. This literally means thinking about your own thinking. It's that voice in your head that goes, wait, am I actually understanding this? Or, maybe making flashcards would be a better way for me to study. You're literally using it right now to prep for your final. Okay, so this brings us to one of the biggest paradoxes of adolescence. If teenagers are getting so good at this high-level logical thinking, why do they sometimes make such risky decisions? Well, the answer lies in the brain's very uneven development. This right here is the key concept, the dual systems model. Think of the teenage brain like a car. The reward network, the part that seeks fun, novelty, and intense feelings, matures early. That's your engine, and it's been supercharged, it's the gas pedal, and it is floored. But the brakes? That's your executive control network, the part that assesses risk and controls impulses. Well, those are still on backorder. They won't be fully installed for years. So what you've got is all gas and no brakes. And it's not just the all gas, no brakes thing. There's more going on. For a teen, the social benefit of, say, looking cool in front of friends can feel way more important than any physical risk. You've also got that classic illusion of invulnerability, the it won't happen to me feeling. And sometimes, It's just a plain old lack of real-world experience. Okay, last section. Let's pull this all together. We've looked at the body, the brain, and new ways of thinking. So how does all this internal stuff actually play out in the adolescent social world? So this is so important to get. The developing brain becomes hypersensitive to peer relationships. In fact, brain imaging studies show that when teenagers feel socially excluded or left out, the parts of their brain that register physical pain light up like a Christmas tree, way more intensely than in adults. Fitting in doesn't just feel important, it can feel like a survival need. And this intense focus on peers has huge real-world consequences. What a teenager believes their friends are doing and what they think their friends approve of is a massive predictor of their own behavior. And that's especially true when it comes to things like sexual activity. Now, after all this talk about risk-taking and peer pressure, you might be bracing for some bad news. But then you see this number, -67%. What on earth could that possibly represent? That is the huge drop in the teen pregnancy rate in many developed nations since the 1970s. This is a really important positive trend to remember. It shows that despite all the biological drives and risks, things like better education and increased use of contraception have led to way better health outcomes. And that really brings us to our final thought. That drive for risk-taking, it isn't inherently bad. It's also about exploration, about pushing boundaries and figuring out who you are. So the big question for all of us is how can we create environments at home, in schools, in our communities that channel that natural teenage drive for novelty and reward in positive, healthy ways? It's something to really think about as you finish your studying. Now go ace that final.